Welcome back to Byte-Sized Tech, where we kind of take these big happenings in tech and we try to break them down into those bite-sized insights that you can actually, digest.
I like that.
Today we're diving deep into a pool of reports articles, even some of your notes that you sent us.
Oh, very cool.
On some pretty big moves in tech.
Yeah.
From AI's evolution to HPE's hurdles and a certain someone in the White House shaking up the crypto world.
Oh, interesting.
So fasten your seatbelts because the tech landscape is changing faster than ever, and we're here to kind of help you make sense of it all.
It's really fascinating to see how all these stories that you just mentioned, they all kind of connect, know, and they reflect these larger currents that are, reshaping the tech world. It's not just about, isolated companies or these isolated announcements, but really, understanding those underlying forces that are really, driving the future of technology.
Right, yeah.
It's really exciting.
Absolutely. So let's kick things off with something that definitely caught my eye.
Okay.
The recent tech stock wobbles.
Yeah.
The NASDAQ Q dipping 6.5%. Even those titans in the Magnificent 7 ETF dropping a significant 11%.
Wow.
What's the deal with that?
Well, one factor that's, making investors a bit nervous is the rise of, some serious competition.
Okay.
Especially from Chinese AI companies.
Oh,
right, like DeepSeek.
DeepSeek.
Yeah, they're really making some serious waves, and and it's raising questions about the long-term dominance of some of these U.S. tech giants.
Right, and then there's the whole trade policy situation.
Yeah.
And its impact on semiconductor manufacturing.
Right.
It feels like everyone's holding their breath, waiting to see how it all plays out.
Definitely adds another layer of uncertainty.
Yeah.
But amidst all this, there's this massive project brewing.
Okay.
That feels like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Oh, really?
The Stargate project. Imagine OpenAI, SoftBank, Oracle, and MGX all teaming up to pour a mind-blowing $500 billion into AI infrastructure right here in the U.S. by 2029.
Okay, $500 billion.
Yeah.
That's not just that's practically a declaration of war on those AI jitters we were just talking about.
Yeah, no, it's a huge commitment.
It feels almost like the Manhattan Project, but for artificial intelligence.
Right.
What's the driving force behind this mega project?
Well, it's a direct response to those concerns about Chinese AI competition.
Okay.
Really aiming to cement the U.S. as the leader in the AI arena. But it's more than just throwing money at the problem. It signals a strategic shift in the AI landscape, moving beyond just the hardware and the infrastructure.
So less about those powerful NVIDIA chips everyone was talking about.
Exactly. Analysis from Goldman Sachs actually points to a shift from, that infrastructure towards software applications. It's like initially everyone was focused on building the most powerful engine.
Right.
But now the focus is shifting to designing, the best cars.
That makes sense.
Sure.
AI needs to be more than just powerful. It has to be useful and solve real-world problems.
Precisely. And this raises a really important question, I think, for everyone listening is, as this shift from infrastructure to applications gains momentum, which companies will be the winners and losers?
Right.
Think about it. Those software companies that are, integrating AI features into their products, are they going to leap ahead? And what about the companies that are, heavily invested in the infrastructure, but don't really have a clear path to monetizing it?
Interesting.
Adaptability is key in this rapidly evolving landscape.
Evolve or become extinct.
Yeah.
Right? Speaking of challenges, let's shift gears and talk about Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, or HPE, as most folks know them.
Yeah, HPE.
They posted a 17% revenue growth, which sounds pretty good on paper.
Yeah, that's not bad.
But their stock took a nearly 20% nosedive.
Oh, wow.
What's going on there?
It's a classic example of how, the raw numbers don't always tell the full story.
Right.
Investors were spooked by HPE's server operating margins taking a hit.
Yeah.
It's like going to a restaurant seeing a really long line, but then finding out that their profit per dish is actually shrinking.
So why are those margins shrinking? Is it just one thing?
Not really. First, you've got the x86 server market, which is just crazy competitive right now.
Okay.
With everyone slashing prices. Then add in some inventory valuation issues that HPE had to grapple with.
Right.
And on top of that, the transition to those fancy new AI server GPUs
Okay.
from the Hopper 100 to the Blackwell 200
Oh, wow.
also played a role.
So even upgrading to the latest and greatest tech can sometimes hurt in the short term?
It absolutely can,
Wow.
especially when you're managing inventory and production costs during a transition like that.
Right. And speaking of big moves, we can't ignore HPE's bold $14 billion bid to acquire Juniper Networks.
Huge deal.
Huge deal.
Yeah.
However, it seems like the Department of Justice isn't exactly throwing a congratulatory party.
No, they are not.
What are their concerns?
Well, the DOJ filed a lawsuit to block the deal,
Okay.
worried about excessive market consolidation. But HPE is firing back, claiming that this merger would actually boost U.S. national security by strengthening domestic tech capabilities. They're also arguing that there's plenty of competition in the market, pointing to at least 8 other major players.
So it's shaping up to be a classic showdown then.
Yeah.
What's next in this saga?
Well, the trial is set for July 9th, 2025, and HPE seems pretty determined to fight for this deal. You know, they're clearly betting big on this acquisition, so it'll be very interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Definitely a story to keep our eyes on. But for now, let's shift back to HPE's internal game plan. It seems they're tackling these challenges with a multi-pronged approach, right? Cost-cutting supply chain adjustments and maybe even saying goodbye to some non-core assets.
They're pulling out all the stocks. Sadly, that includes a 5% workforce reduction, which is never easy news, but they're framing it as part of a larger effort to streamline operations and ultimately, boost profitability.
That makes sense. It sounds like they're playing a delicate balancing act, trying to cut costs while also doubling down on areas with growth potential.
Exactly. They're betting on a comeback with a big focus on networking, hybrid cloud, and storage. Networking is already showing signs of recovery with double-digit growth year over year.
Wow.
Hybrid cloud is booming with an 11% increase, and strong storage bookings kind of indicate a healthy pipeline for future business.
So amidst the storm clouds, there are some rays of sunshine peeking through for HPE.
There are some bright spots, definitely.
But now for a twist I bet you didn't see coming.
Okay.
Uncle Sam is diving headfirst into the crypto pool.
What?
President Trump just signed an executive order to create a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Wow.
I have to admit, this one caught me off guard. What's the story here?
Well, it's a major development.
Yeah.
That signals a huge shift in how the U.S. government views cryptocurrencies. They're finally acknowledging them as legitimate assets, potentially even a hedge against the volatility we see in traditional markets. They woke up one morning and realized, hey, crypto's here to stay. We better get on board.
And it sounds like they're not just dipping their toes in. They're going for a full cannonball into the deep end.
That's right. They're not just buying Bitcoin either.
Oh.
They're creating a, quote, digital asset stockpile, unquote.
Okay.
That includes other major players like Ethereum, Ripple, Solana, and Cardano.
So they're building a diversified crypto portfolio just like a savvy investor. But where's this money coming from?
Right.
Are they dipping into taxpayer funds?
Actually, no. They're being quite clever about it.
Okay.
This reserve will be primarily financed through cryptocurrencies seized in criminal or civil asset proceedings.
Oh, so it's like they're turning lemons into lemonade, or in this case, turning seized digital assets into a strategic reserve. That's pretty smart. Not only does it avoid burdening taxpayers, but it also creates a structured system for managing these seized assets, which hasn't always been handled smoothly in the past.
Right. Remember that report about billions of dollars in seized crypto essentially vanishing due to a lack of clear policies?
Oh, yeah. That was a bit of a mess. So this new approach is definitely a step in the right direction.
It is. And it's all part of this bigger push by the Trump administration to embrace crypto. Remember that crypto summit at the White House?
Oh, yeah.
President Trump seems determined to make the U.S. the, quote, crypto capital of the world, unquote.
Wow, from skepticism to full-on crypto champion.
Yeah.
That's quite a turnaround. But with all this excitement and ambition, there's still the question of regulation, right?
Right.
The U.S. needs a clear framework to support responsible growth in the crypto industry.
Absolutely. That's the missing piece of the puzzle right now. The EU has taken the lead with its MiCA regulation, and the U.S. needs to find its own path, striking that balance between fostering innovation and protecting investors.
So finding that sweet spot where innovation can flourish without things getting too Wild West.
Exactly. And the market is watching very closely. Remember that surge in cryptocurrency prices following the strategic reserve announcement?
Oh, yeah?
That's a sign of increased investor confidence. But regulatory clarity is key for that confidence to really solidify and for the market to truly mature in a sustainable way.
It sounds like the U.S. taking this leap into the crypto pool is sending ripples throughout the entire market.
It definitely is.
Wow.
The question is, will those ripples turn into waves of positive change or a tsunami of unforeseen consequences?
Now that's a question to ponder.
Yeah.
So far, we've covered a lot of ground, from those tech stock dips to HPE's roller coaster ride, and of course the U.S. government's grand entrance into the crypto arena. But as always, we like to take things a step further.
Absolutely. I've given you the what, but now let's dive deeper into the why and what it all means, for you, the listener.
Exactly. So stick with us as we unpack the bigger picture and explore how these tech shifts might impact your everyday life and the future we're all shaping.
We've been talking about these big shifts in the tech world, but let's bring it down to earth for a moment.
Okay.
How might these changes actually impact the everyday life of, someone listening right now?
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the jargon and the big numbers, but what does it all mean for someone who's not necessarily, a tech expert or a Wall Street investor?
We'll take AI, for example.
Yeah.
As those investments shift from, building the infrastructure to developing, practical applications, we're going to see this, this explosion of new AI-powered products and services.
Okay.
Imagine personalized education tools that adapt to your learning style, in real time.
Wow.
Or healthcare apps that can analyze your data and detect early warning signs of disease.
So AI is becoming less about the technology itself and more about how it can solve those real-world problems and, improve our lives.
Exactly. And that's where the true impact lies.
Right.
Think about it. AI has the potential to revolutionize entire industries, create new job categories we can't even imagine yet, and maybe even help us tackle some of the world's toughest challenges.
It's almost like AI is moving from the realm of science fiction into our daily reality.
It is, and it's happening faster than most people realize. Now let's shift gears to HPE's challenges.
Okay.
While those might seem like issues only a tech giant would face, they actually reflect broader trends impacting the entire industry.
Interesting.
Intense competition, global supply chain disruptions, the constant pressure to innovate. These are things that many companies are grappling with right now.
So HPE's struggles are kind of a microcosm of the larger tech landscape.
Precisely their efforts to adapt, by cutting costs, focusing on those high growth areas, even making those bold acquisitions. Those are strategies other companies might have to consider as well. It's a reminder that even those tech giants aren't immune to these market forces.
And then there's that whole crypto earthquake we were talking about. The U.S. government going all in on Bitcoin and other digital assets.
Huge.
It's a pretty big deal, right? But for someone who's maybe curious about crypto but hasn't really jumped in yet, what does it actually mean for them?
It's a clear sign that crypto is moving from the fringes into the mainstream.
Yeah.
When governments start taking it seriously, it lends legitimacy to the entire sector. This could lead to wider adoption, more user-friendly platforms, and even, new ways to use crypto in our daily lives.
So from paying for your morning coffee
Yeah.
with Bitcoin to maybe even buying a house with crypto someday.
It's not outside the realm of possibility, but remember, the regulatory landscape is still evolving. That's why it's important to stay informed, do your research, and not go all in on any one thing.
Don't put all your eggs in one crypto basket, so to say.
Exactly. Diversification is key, whether we're talking about, investments or, crypto holdings.
Right.
So we've talked about the impact on everyday life.
Yeah.
But let's zoom out a bit.
Okay.
What are the bigger implications of these tech shifts? What might the future hold?
Yeah. Let's put on our futurist hats for a moment.
Okay.
What kind of world are these developments shaping?
We're on the cusp of a technological revolution.
Okay.
And the things we're seeing today are just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
AI has the potential to transform industries, from healthcare and education to manufacturing and transportation in ways we can barely imagine. The U.S. government embracing crypto could reshape the global financial system as we know it.
So it's not just about new gadgets or faster internet. It's about fundamental changes to how our society functions.
Exactly. Imagine a world where, digital currencies are widely accepted, transactions are faster and more secure, and financial access is expanded to those who've been excluded from traditional systems.
It's a bold vision of the future, and it's exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is exciting. But we also need to be mindful of the challenges. We have to address issues like data privacy, cybersecurity, and the potential for economic disruption. These are complex problems that require, careful thought and collaboration.
Yeah. So it's not just about embracing the technology. It's about managing its impact on society and ensuring that it benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Exactly. We need to have, thoughtful conversations about the ethical implications of AI, the role of government in regulating these emerging technologies, and how to ensure that, everyone benefits from this progress.
That's a lot to unpack, and it highlights just how important it is to stay informed and engage in these conversations. But while we're on the topic of important conversations, I think it's time for us to start wrapping up this deep dive into the wild world of tech. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground, from those stock market dips to HPE's strategic maneuvering and that unexpected crypto curveball from the U.S. government.
We certainly have explored a lot, but, in this ever-evolving landscape of technology, there's always, more to discover. I think it's safe to say that we've only just scratched the surface.
That's what I love about these deep dives. I get to unpack these complex topics, connect the dots, and really try to, make sense of it all, especially for our listeners who you might not have the time to sift through, mountains of articles and reports.
Absolutely. It's about distilling those key insights and making them accessible to everyone.
So for those just joining us, let's do a quick recap. We talked about how AI investments are shifting gears, focusing more on those real-world applications that, could impact your everyday life.
Right.
HPE is facing some challenges, but, they've got the comeback plan in motion, focusing on growth areas like networking, hybrid cloud, and storage. And, of course, we can't forget about the U.S. taking that leap into the crypto pool with their strategic Bitcoin reserve.
It's a lot to process, but it paints this fascinating picture of where the tech world is heading. We're seeing this shift, from the infrastructure and the building blocks to those practical applications that really impact our lives, businesses, even governments.
Exactly. And as always, we want to leave you with something to ponder. A question to spark your curiosity, and maybe even some lively dinner table conversations. So here it is. Could the U.S. really become the, quote, crypto capital of the world, unquote? What would it take? What are the potential benefits, the risks, and who are the winners and losers in this grand crypto game?
That's a question with no easy answers. And it goes beyond just, technology. It touches upon economics, geopolitics, even the very definition of money itself.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it. The future of finance technology and global power dynamics might actually hinge on how this crypto revolution unfolds.
And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to write the next chapter in this story.
No, that's a thought. Well, on that note of endless possibility and the future being written, in lines of code, I think it's time to wrap up this episode of Byte-Sized Tech.
It's been a pleasure diving into these topics with you and our listeners.
Thanks for tuning into Byte-Sized Tech. If you enjoyed the episode, like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun tech discussions.